Awesome. Guys, welcome to Beyond the Frame. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Mikey.
And today we have Luca Netz, the savior of Pudgy Penguins, on the show. Hey, Luca, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Super stoked to be here.
Awesome. Glad to have you here. And so we're going to do something like kind of interesting, kind of fun. We're going to do a little quick fire Q&A. So if you could keep it to like a one word, one sentence answer, that's going to be great. I'm just going to start. Crypto dick butts or D-gods?
D-gods.
Are you sure about that?
I'm sure about that.
You're okay. Absolutely sure. I'm a crypto dick butt maxi, but we'll take the D-gods. I also love D-gods. NFTs in fashion, stylish or excessive?
Stylish.
Okay, cool. Digital art or physical art?
Digital art.
Love it. If you were to participate in an NFT treasure hunt, do you participate or pass?
Participate. I mean, right now, not participate. I'm don't have enough time in the day, but participate. Sorry.
We'll say participate on that one.
Nice.
NFT backed loans, smart or risky?
I would actually say smart.
I mean, love that.
Definitely risky, but I no, that's a bad answer. Damn. Risky.
I love that answer. We're going smart. We're smashing smart. Collectible NFTs or utility NFTs?
Collectible NFTs.
NFTs as gifts, thoughtful or impersonable?
Thoughtful.
NFT royalties, yes or no?
Yes.
Digi-physical NFTs, intriguing or excessive?
Intriguing.
What's the first NFT you bought?
Ferocious.
What's the most recent NFT you bought?
Pudgy Penguins.
Love it. NFT collaborations, what's the dream duo? Let's go.
There's too many options.
Let's go.
Out of the synergy and respect and alignment, I would say something with D-gods and Frank.
That is, I love that answer. Okay, if you were to tokenize any personable item as an NFT, what would it be?
Probably like a family heirloom, like a photo of the family or something like that.
Love it. All right, that's the done of. We're done with the quick fire. Appreciate that. I hope it was fun. Yeah. Thanks for entertaining that. I definitely enjoyed the answers.
Yeah, that was fun actually. It's like totally unorthodox to what anybody else does. So I appreciate the making this exciting.
Yeah, it was definitely like a last minute thing. So I think it might become our thing. Let's definitely see. Cool. Yeah, Mikey, you want to kind of like jump in and get on the more serious train?
Let's do it. By the way, thank you for that exhilarating segment, Ryan and Luca. I wanted to start off high level, given that, Luca, you've seen and built a lot of things in the past year. You've witnessed some projects gain momentum and lose it as well. You've been through some different market cycles. Hypothetically, if someone were to start from scratch today, with no funding or no Twitter presence, what are the key things that you would do, and how would you approach starting something new?
Need to have a laser focused vision from the get-go. Just spend as much time as you need to understand your value proposition and make sure that value proposition is unique enough that it can be used to galvanize the right audience. So I think we've noticed this. There's a certain demographic of user that you really want to be a part of your community, and you will only attract them through a clear vision and vocalizing that clear vision. And I think a lot of people who get into the space today, and a lot of people have made this mistake in the past, have had their vision pivot multiple times, bring in new audiences that don't mesh well, and thus you have a lot of friction, which makes things really tough. And so it's actually one that I thought more people in the space had a clear vision. And as I got to meet a lot of founders, I realized that a lot of people are running around with their head cut off. And understand your value proposition and lean into it would probably be my number one piece of advice build a team that you can trust, that you can rely on, and understand that this is a really tough business that requires a ton of mental fortitude and commitment. And you need to make sure that the people who are on your team are aligned with what it is to be a startup, what it is to be a startup in Web3, because not a lot of people, I think, realize what that means.
Totally. And you've spent a lot of time, I assume, building your team from when you first acquired Pudgy Penguins. I'm curious about that decision process and how long it took and what sort of hoops did you have to get through in order to build the right one?
Yeah, I think optimizing for a perfect team is always a work in progress. To say that we're completely perfect is not true. And this is something that I think is relatively difficult, but I tried. It's probably the most difficult part of entrepreneurship. I'm soon realizing is just optimizing every facet and every department so that there's a leader to really know how to lead that department and that vertical. But from my perspective, my thought process was take the people that I'd worked with in the past, in which our working relationship went really well, and try to find the most talented people in those respective fields that I had worked with in the past to own that department. And I also kind of filtered through the people who were really serious versus the people who weren't, because the main C-level group on our side actually put money into the acquisition. So I wasn't the only person contributing. So it's just like, hey, we're all aligned, we're all committed, we're all involved. And that was kind of how we structured it. But team building is the hardest part of entrepreneurship. It truly is. And every day you go through a different learning lesson, and it really is just about finding the right little nucleus, right? So a team could be 15 people, but as long as 4 or 5 of the core group is aligned, I think that's all you need to succeed and figure it out.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. It's very hard to do. And I guess, like, what do you look for specifically, like, in these people, especially when identifying like leaders?
Yeah, this is really interesting because I've actually learned that on the pendulum, there's 2 groups that you will immediately migrate to as an entrepreneur, or as a CEO looking for talent. And group number 1 is hyper talented group, just extremely talented, maybe the most talented. But there's a caveat to that talent is they feel it's almost like a little bit of lackadaisicalness, or just like, I'm super smart, I'm super talented, I don't need to be putting in the 14 hours the next person is. And then there's this other person. And so I typically would have migrated to that first one, because I really appreciate talented people. But the second one is maybe a less talented person, maybe half as talented, but will give you 18 hours a day, 7 days a week if you need it. And I like that second person more than I do like the first person. And I've built teams and businesses in the past around the first person. But when you get into hyper competitive complexities, the second person is really who you want on your side. And so sometimes you have to compromise a little bit on the talent for the person who has the tenacity and passion to work their ass off for the vision.
That's awesome. And a part of the team building has been working towards the toys, which you guys recently launched, and it's been a hot topic on Twitter. Just from an overarching point of view, I think that going to market in the toy space is extremely hard. There are thousands of toy companies trying to compete for the same shelf space, actually more than 5,000 every year to be exact. I'm curious, like, given your experience at Gelblaster, I would love to hear about some of the reasons why you think that Web2 toy companies actually fail, and how you've adapted at Pudgy by learning from those mistakes.
Yeah, the toy business is an archaic business. It's a business that lacks innovation and lacks young talent. And so the ways that toys succeed, there hasn't been somebody to come in and really shake up the industry. There's been a couple, and those couple have been the ones who have been extremely successful. And so my thought process here is I believe that Web3 is a superpower. It's either a huge weakness or a huge superpower. And in the moment where it's a superpower, it is my first couple thousand customers. It's my first couple thousand positive reviews. It's my first thousand or couple thousand champions of my brand. And when you look at consumer products and toys specifically, it's that little spark and that little ember that is the most difficult to cultivate. And I believe with the aligned incentives of the NFT between brand and consumer, that the Web3 community will rally behind that product. I also believe the entire space will rally behind that product because it's not something that's typical in a very digitally native space, but I think one that is necessary if we really believe or if we really want to achieve what we call mass adoption, which is impacting, tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people. I think there's no better way to drive awareness to something than through IP. The love of a character and the mind share and how it dominates the everyday behavior of a person, I think is up there with problems like payments and all of the things that I think crypto and Web3 stand for. And so that's probably the first one. The second one is, I think we have a playbook that we've rinsed and repeated over the last couple of businesses that I've been a part of and that some of the team members on this team have been a part of, that we know how to create what we call an earthquake, which is just buzz. And so I was actually talking to Omir at PMI, who's our toy partner. And so I think we have amazing partners between PMI, Retail Monster, myself. I kind of refer to it internally as the three-headed monster because I think distribution we have between us three, there isn't a retailer or partner we can't get in touch with and potentially get our products shelved on. And then there's a little aspect of it that is just like, does the consumer like the product? Does the character stick on the shelf, right? But the advantage of having a Web3 feedback loop and a hyper engaged community that already exists is edge number one. Edge number two is having the experience in the playbook at really moving consumer products in a way that most people in the world cannot. And then three, I guess would be, I kind of jumped ahead and kind of put the luck part or the character part, but then three would probably be like value proposition. Like what makes your brand different than others? At Pudgy Penguins, our brand is about uplifting other people, right? And so we make an effort to uplift people, whether it's through memes or jokes or positive affirmations or funny content. And we believe that if you support other people, that they will support you. And it's a really great message that people can rally behind. And then there's just that variable of, the fourth one, which I mentioned a little bit earlier, which is just, does your character stick? Does the consumer like it, right? Does the IP permeate and resonate? I believe it's already shown that. Like, I think there's a lot of people who are copying today a lot of what we're doing in the space, right? They're seeing how we're galvanizing on socials. They see, how well the NFT is doing. I think we've already proven that people love the character. And I guess the toys are really the final step to confirm that thesis.
For sure. And you mentioned actually in a previous podcast that going to market too early in the Web2 toy world can be detrimental because there's no interest or momentum. On the flip side, going to market too late means you're missing out on demand that's actually there. I'm curious, now that you've built this community, you've gotten a lot of reviews on Twitter about the toys. How did you actually balance timing? And why do you think right now is a good time to release Pudgy toys, especially in this NFT market?
Yeah, I think the bear market is where you show the most output possible. This is where the hype and all of that stuff is not there. And my job right now is to make it unequivocally clear that we are doing something that nobody else is doing and that we're building a real business and a real company that's going to stand the test of time and that a majority of the people around us are not. And we have a vision. The vision has always been build Web3's first great IP company, and everything that we do is aligned with that vision. I think in regards to the scarcity model and the supply and demand, from my perspective, we were very sensitive in how many units we sold. And so though we'll be in a lot of places, it's not like the back room is stocked with an abundance of Pudgy Penguin stuff. We were very methodical in this approach. And I want stores to be sold out. I want them to be clawing and yearning for more. I didn't go put 100,000 units in some brick and mortar with 50 locations, right? I was very conscious of this. This is important because physical scarcity is just as important as digital scarcity. And so for us, there was also that fine line where we also have to show the community what we're about. And we said we were going to do this in August, and you can't really wait, a year and a half to go do something. You have to be reasonable and keep the trust and maintain the relationship between yourself and the people who believe in you. And so I think, we waited about a good 6 months, probably 7 months by the time we actually go to market, and it's live across, the world. And I think that's a reasonable expectation and amount of time to announce something and say we're doing it and then ship it. We could have probably waited a little bit longer, but I want to split test. I want to see what the market looks like in the summertime, because I know Q4, not only because of the quarter, but because of the seasonal character that is the penguin and the winter theme. I want to make sure I know exactly what to do and when to do it and how to do it when that time comes.
Yeah, it's exciting because the Penguins, a lot of them have the Christmas sweaters, which align perfectly with that season. Wanted to pivot a bit more into ROGs. So obviously you guys made the announcement, I believe it was about a week or two ago. You mentioned that there were many different possibilities for utility that you were thinking about. One route was the license gating. The other one was burn and redeem. I'm curious how much input came directly from the community when you were making your decision, and how did they essentially integrate into how you came up with the utility?
Yeah, so this one was complicated. I leaned on to all of our advisors. I leaned into select holders. It wasn't something that I was, I had done previous sessions months before and asked them what they thought utility was. The thing is when you look at where the outcomes actually lie, there's really a plethora of variables that I think made us make the decision that we were going to. The first one is we couldn't wait. And why we couldn't wait is because, and this is straight from these founders' mouths, but I won't really say who, but you could probably assume. But I talked to a lot of blue chips who are not really feeling it right now. And I said, what is the reason why you're here? Now I knew I had my own assessment, and it turned out we both had the same assessment. But they said the lack of clarity behind our boxes or these items in which utility wasn't exponentially clear led to speculation that led people to spend huge amounts of money on something that they didn't really know what was happening. And what happened is those things nuked dramatically, which kind of brought everything down and made a lot of people salty and sour and upset. And so one thing I didn't want to do is let the speculation run rampant and eventually lead people to a moment where they are spending tons of Ethereum on something they don't have a clear understanding about. It's probably sense of urgency, reason number one. The second variable that's really important to factor is the fact that rods have a sliding scale in their rarity, and people spend exponentially more money on rares and mythicals than they do on commons and uncommons. And so how you can't, the utility can't be, hey, ROG holders, all of you guys get free t-shirts or free toys. And hey, mythical guys, you guys get 5 free toys versus the guy, the commons. Anything like that would have been a complete, utter disaster, right? Because you're just putting a price to a physical good. It just leads to expectations. Well, what if it's an event? Well, an event can't cater to 3,000 ROG holders. So what are your options here really? And so for us, to me, the Pudgy rod is an amplifier to our ecosystem and amplifies the airdrop effects or the potential airdrop effects or licensing effects of a penguin. It was the only thing that made sense. Now, the one thing that we did wrong, and I'll speak about it openly and objectively, is we wanted to bring value to we wanted rods to be beneficial to the big pudgies and little pudgies. But what ended up happening is we didn't incentivize people holding multiple rods, right? Past their penguin and little pudgy holdings, which I guess was the mistake in the process. Though I'm going to be honest, after further thought, I completely stand by, with the exception of missing that variable, I stand by what we did there because I just don't think when you're looking at like how to accrue value to holders, how to make a fishing rod that is so skewed on prices and rarity, and how do you apply that across the board to all of your holders, this to me was the only outcome. There was no other outcome that over the course of the next couple of years of this project could we have accrued value back to holders in a better way than with what we did to the fishing rods. And I think the only piece that we missed is we didn't think about we were trying to make sure, because if you make the fishing rods too powerful, like for example, a gate, like here's a great one, a gatekeep to licensing. Well, then you just take away the utility from big penguins and little pudgies, and then you just screwed the whole thing, right? Like you can't do that. There's not enough fishing rods for all of them. And our ethos and our thesis here is how do we, monetize, how do you, take this character, bring it into products and licensing. Our bridge between transactional utility, our thought here is licensing is the lowest hanging utility. And so you couldn't make it too OP. There's a couple ways where you could have like made them super powerful, but then it would have taken away from the power and the intrigue of the pudgy and the little pudgy. And so the way that I think things shook out, I think was really for the best interest of everyone. And I know over the long term that we will ROG utility, once people see it in real time, we'll just hit it out of the park. I just know how that's going to look like. And obviously I can't share it to the public because we got to keep things fun. But I know that stuff is going to look so cool to people and make so much sense once they see it in real time. And that was kind of the decision making and how we got there.
I love that you're standing by your decision. And I think a lot of people in the community were very happy about your thoughtfulness. And the announcement was generally well received. You also tweeted out a few days after the announcement that you've learned so much from your community based on the reaction that they gave. I'm curious, what are some specific things you learned about your holders about after the announcement, and how does this make you want to make decisions moving forward?
Yeah, this was interesting because the sentiment like across a majority of people was like extremely positive. The problem is what had happened openly is like price dropped 50% on them, but it was because the guys who owned 150 and 60 of them were like, well, I own 5 or 10 penguins, so there's no point in me holding the other 45. But I think like a majority of people were really aligned with the decision and thought, hey, there's really no better decision to do this. And I leaned on some really smart people here, some people that are advisors to the company, that are on our cap table, that are, have been have been huge community members. And like, we all kind of came to the same decision. And then, price drops a little bit. So you got to be thoughtful. You have to be empathetic. You have to understand why that happened and where that went wrong. And we're going to make it having an abundance of rods, and we're going to figure out how we make that fair to the people who are quote unquote rod maxis. I don't want anybody to feel like we didn't think of them. I think that's important. But I realized what was happening, and rather than just being like completely heartless about it, like understanding that people's money is involved, I was just talking around. And a majority of people that I spoke to gave some really good feedback. And a lot of them just gave me some thought processes that I might not have really thought of, but it all came down to the common denominator that the only mistake really here was you just didn't factor in. There's truthfully 2 mistakes. One, you should have made the utility live in real time versus saying, hey, it's coming 6 weeks later. The variable there, I haven't really gone into detail, but we have a rollout with toys that's coming ahead of us. And so we didn't want to drown out toys or stack toys on top of rod utility. That didn't make sense. You only have so many moments in the course of a calendar year to really drive attention. And jamming 2 things into 1 month versus 2 things into 3 months, 2 things into 3 months is way more advantageous than jamming 2 things into 1 month, right? It's like you keep the attention, you keep people involved. And so the way that toys kind of shook out, I had learned a personal lesson here where sometimes my tweets can be like I set an expectation with a tweet. And because of that expectation, I felt like I needed to meet it. When in reality, I probably should have just delayed it, done toys, then announced rods, and then with the utility live. I think that was really what I learned internally was I need to be able to feel like I can delay something, even if I said it was coming in a certain time. Like that's just that was me being adjusted to Web3 and that audience. And then that was probably one. And then two, just factor in the people who own, because there were guys who owned 200 fishing rods and no penguins. They just bought fishing rods because they thought were fun. I didn't factor them in. Now you back up and you look at the macro health of the ecosystem. This was so necessary, right? Because like rods going to, being speculated into oblivion, people not knowing what was going on. If I would have just let that go, I promise, just looking at my peers and colleagues around me and what has happened to their ecosystems, this was the necessary move, whether some people will agree with it today or not. Like, I know long term, this was the move that was necessary for this to be done. But the power of your community will always be more than the power of your mind. Like, there's 100 minds will always outperform one mind. At least the NFT space is interesting because there's a lot of smart individuals. You're not, to the average Joe, NFTs are not easy, right? And so, you have to have some sort of cognitive ability and have some sort of, brain power to be in this space today. And so the feedback that you get are just not, 100 people on the street. You're getting 100 people that are relatively savvy and bright. And I think our community has like one of the most affluent crypto builder, crypto native user bases, that they just gave me all of these variations that I thought were really thoughtful. And the beauty about them was it was more of like, hey, this is how we do it better, not like, oh, some sort of harsh criticism. I think everybody across the board, even if you had 200 rods, understood why we did it and why that is beneficial for the group long term.
Let's talk about building in public. So building in public is extremely tough, right? Not only do you have to manage expectations of the community, but you also have to kind of you have to listen to them and you have to source their ideas. What are some of the things what are some of the hard lessons you've learned in building in public? I'd like to ask what you would do differently, but I think let's just keep it. What are some of the hard lessons you've learned?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. At its core, whether we'd like to admit it or not, this business is a publicly traded startup. It's just what it is, right? At its core definition, its core functionality, how it feels, how it looks. I think the first one is, in the beginning, I wasn't galvanizing. I wasn't spreading the vision, which is really my job as CEO. And so, lesson number one was galvanize earlier, spread the vision earlier, I think would probably be something that I'd kind of go back on. One, I think, and this is maybe less for me, but more for the space, is over communicate instead of under communicate. Like, it's just like a relationship, it's very much like an intimate relationship, as funny as that sounds. You're way better off over communicating than you are under communicating. The next one I would think is always under promise and over deliver. It's really hard sometimes when people are putting pressure. You're seeing things in the chat. You just want to give them something. You want to say it's coming. And I think I could do a better job here. Not to say that I think what we're doing is really awesome and exciting, because it is. Just like I just like to do and to show, and I don't like speaking about it, but the space wants you to speak about it. And so it's like a really fine balance and a fine line that is really just a constant work in progress. I think it's going to be years before it's like a skill that's needed to be mastered. And yeah, I think, realistically for me, I think I'm one of the, and not to toot my own horn, but I think I've done this some of the, probably the best. I haven't really felt serious pain, because since day one, it's been like, this is not me and my vision, it's really our vision. And so I can set the foundation and the guardrails for where I think we should go, right? Like, I'm not going to have somebody convince me that I should go build a next play to earn metaverse game, right? My guardrails are, we're a Web3 IP company and we want to be the best version of that. But like, all the in between and the minutia is really a work in progress and a collaborative effort. I mean, I really, since day one, the culture that I've built inside this community is like, I'm listening, I'm here, I'm trying my best. I'm going to communicate with you guys every step of the way. And that's been the process up until this point.
So how do you manage balancing community input versus like core team based decision making?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because you have to like the vision is Web3 IP company, right? And through each initiative, you can kind of pick and pull ideas from the group. I love hearing ideas, so I'll do like these stand-ups once every 2 weeks, give the mic to the room for any ideas that the community may have. Our toy integration, the community played a huge part in what this toy experience looks like, and bringing soul-bound NFTs to the hands of everyday consumers, like really exciting stuff. That was pretty much a community idea. And so like I think it's really initiative centric. For me, it's less about the overarching vision, because the overarching vision has to stay clear, and it has to be that this is how I see us winning. This is me identifying the problem in the space and how we want to solve for it, and identifying our core competencies and the core competencies of the IP and the project and the community, and leaning into that. And then I think really on an initiative basis, I'm open to any and all initiatives that the community brings. And so we'll take an idea and we'll run with it and we'll create it. Or we'll take an initiative in its infancy, bring it to the room, and then just get feedback and basically say, hey, this is the infant idea. We want to make the toy more than a toy. What do you guys think we should do? Some guy comes up and says, soul-bound NFTs, not dilutive, make it your mass market Pokemon card. I'm like, oh my God, you're a genius. Thanks. You know what I mean? Thanks for the weeks of critical thinking that I would have done the back and forth and within our internal echo chamber to get that same deviation. So that's the beauty here.
That's awesome. I feel like we could talk for another like couple hours, but is there anything else you kind of want to hit on before we close it out?
No, this is actually really exciting though. Most people just rinse and repeat the same things. You guys totally went off course on this one, so I really appreciate
Oh, cool.
the questions.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think we're just like fans, Pudgy holders and fans. So I think that's what makes it special. Last one for me. How can people get involved? How can people collaborate with Pudgy? Well, how can people help out?
Yeah, this is just, I tell the community this, just be our champions. You'd be surprised what rocking a PFP on Telegram or Instagram or Twitter, you become a digital billboard. When our products come, they're not going to be expensive. Our cheapest toy is probably going to be $5. Spend $5 on Amazon, leave a 5-star review, or leave a review. What you put the stars that you think are applicable, that you think makes sense for the experience that you got. Just like and share and comment on the social media stuff. Like I'm not asking, I love when people build what we call clans, which are like sub communities. I love when people take initiative and create content and GIFs. And, the community is really interesting because we're going to do some like internal workshops with the group this next month, really defining licensing and like what are the qualifications. Actually something I'm meaning to talk to you right after I get off on this call. But some community members are really going above and beyond and just understanding like, hey, if I make GIFs for my penguin, it's more likely to be licensed because like I'm getting more views and more traction. I just want to like harness this. Like I want to be able to, the one flaw in our little system right now that we're going to fix this month is like, how do we really reward and recognize people that are going above and beyond for our ecosystem? Because there's a subset of people, and I think anybody that's a Pudgy Penguin holder would want that person to be rewarded because it's growing the entire umbrella. And so, if you're a Pudgy Penguin holder, at a minimum, your profile pictures are welcomed, your likes and your retweets and your comments and your shares are appreciated. Your reviews and your feedback on our product, I think is really just like a bare minimum what I ask. And over the course of the next couple of weeks, we're going to make it very clear how we're going to help and reward users who want to go above and beyond with their Pudgy Penguin. And so this is kind of where we are today, and I appreciate every single member of the huddle. You are one of us, and so if you are a Pudgy Penguin and you're listening to this, welcome to the group. Mike, Ryan, I know you guys are a part of the group. So how do we create something that's never been done before in a very early space? And so super happy to be leading this charge and being a part of an amazing group of Pudgy Penguins.
Let's go. Luca, super appreciate your time today. Listeners, go follow Pudgy Penguins on Twitter at Pudgy Penguins. And of course, go follow Luca as well at Luca Netz. Thanks a ton, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Luca.